Ares was not like the other gods of Olympus, and that difference defined everything about him. While the other Olympians ruled with purpose, strategy, or control, Ares represented something far more raw and uncontrollable. He was the god of war, but not the kind of war that brought glory, honor, or heroic legends. He was the embodiment of chaos, violence, and the brutal reality that lay behind every battle ever fought. Where others saw conflict as a means to an end, Ares saw it as the end itself. The clash of swords, the roar of armies, the fear in the eyes of soldiers, all of it fed something deep within him. War was not his duty, it was his nature. Born as the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Hera, the queen of Olympus, Ares should have stood among the most respected of the divine. But instead of admiration, he was met with something very different. Even his own father despised him. Zeus saw in Ares a reflection of everything he disliked about war. Not strategy, not victory, but pointless destruction. Unlike Athena, who represented wisdom in battle, planning, and discipline, Ares was reckless. He did not think ahead, he did not calculate outcomes, he did not care about consequences. He rushed into conflict driven by instinct, by emotion, by a need to feel the chaos of war around him. From an early age, it became clear that Ares did not belong among gods who valued control. He was drawn to violence the way fire is drawn to air, naturally and without resistance. While other gods shaped the world, Ares watched it burn and felt alive in the flames. He did not create cities, he did not guide heroes, and he did not inspire civilization. Instead, he walked among warriors, standing on battlefields soaked in blood, where the line between life and death disappeared in seconds. He was not a distant god watching from above. He was there, in the middle of the fight, hearing every scream, feeling every strike, living inside the chaos that others feared, and that is what made him so dangerous. Ares was not evil in the traditional sense, but he lacked something that held others back. He had no restraint, no desire for balance, no interest in peace. War, to him, was not a tragedy, it was truth. It revealed what beings really were when everything else was stripped away. Strength, fear, rage, survival, all of it existed most clearly in battle. And Ares did not just observe that truth. He embraced it completely, even among the Olympians. This made him an outsider. The gods feared his unpredictability. They could negotiate, manipulate, and control each other. But Ares did not play those games. He did not scheme like Zeus or deceive like others. He acted, and once he moved, nothing could easily stop him. This is why he was both powerful and isolated, a god who had strength beyond measure, but no true place to belong. Olympus was not his home, and neither was the world of mortals. His true home was the battlefield, a place where order collapsed and chaos reigned. But even a god like Ares, driven by war and destruction, was not beyond emotion. Beneath the violence and rage, there were moments that revealed something more human within him. Moments that would change his story in ways even he could not predict. Because war was not the only force that could control him, there were other powers, quieter but just as strong, that would shape his path. And when those forces appeared, they would show that even the god of war was not as simple as he seemed. Despite his nature, Ares was not untouched by emotion, and this was something that set him apart in a way few expected. Beneath the armor, beneath the rage and violence, there existed something more complicated. It was not calm, and it was not gentle, but it was real. Among all the chaos he embraced, there was one force that could pull him away from the battlefield, even if only for a moment. That force was love. And the one who held that power over him was Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Their connection was not peaceful or pure in the way poets often describe love. It was intense, consuming, and dangerous, much like Ares himself. Aphrodite was everything Ares was not. Where he brought destruction, she brought desire. Where he thrived in chaos, she ruled over attraction and emotion. And yet, somehow, they were drawn to each other. It was not balance that connected them, but contrast. Together, they represented two of the most powerful forces in existence, love and war, both capable of shaping the fate of gods and mortals alike. But their relationship was forbidden. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship, a union arranged not out of love, but out of necessity and politics among the gods. Hephaestus, unlike Ares, was patient, intelligent, and skilled. He built wonders, crafted weapons, and created things that lasted. Ares, in contrast, destroyed without hesitation. And yet, despite everything, Aphrodite chose Ares, not for stability, not for logic, but for passion. Their secret could not remain hidden forever. The gods watched, and whispers spread across Olympus. Eventually, Hephaestus learned the truth. But instead of reacting with blind rage, he used something Ares lacked: strategy. With his unmatched skill, he crafted an invisible net, stronger than any chain, and laid a trap. When Ares and Aphrodite met in secret once more, they were caught, trapped, unable to escape, exposed before the gods of Olympus. The moment was not one of quiet shame, but public humiliation. The gods were called to witness what had been hidden, and they laughed. Not out of joy, but out of mockery. Ares, the god of war, powerful and feared, stood helpless. For once, strength meant nothing. There was no battlefield, no enemy to strike, no chaos to hide within. Only stillness, and the weight of being seen, not as a force of destruction, but as something vulnerable. This moment revealed something important about Ares. For all his power, he was not untouchable. He could be outmatched, not by strength, but by intelligence and patience. It was a lesson he did not easily accept, but one that remained with him. Because war was not always about force. Sometimes, it was about control. And in that moment, Ares had none. After this, his reputation among the gods did not improve. If anything, it became worse. He was no longer just feared, but ridiculed. The god of war, defeated not in battle, but in a moment of carelessness. And yet, this did not change who he was. If anything, it drove him deeper into what he understood best: conflict, violence, war. But the world of mortals still called to him. Because while the gods mocked him, humans feared him. And fear was something Ares understood well. On the battlefield, his presence could turn the tide of war. Soldiers who felt his influence fought harder, struck faster, and lost themselves completely to the fight. But this gift came with a cost. Where Ares walked, destruction followed. Victory was never clean, and survival was never guaranteed. And so, Ares continued, moving between gods and mortals, between Olympus and the battlefield, never fully belonging to either. But his story was far from over. Because there would come a time when even he, the embodiment of war itself, would face something he could not simply overpower. And that moment would change everything. For all his power and presence on the battlefield, Ares was not invincible. And this truth became clear during one of the greatest conflicts in Greek mythology, the Trojan War. This was not just a war between mortals. It was a stage where gods chose sides, interfered, and revealed their true nature. And for Ares, this war was everything he had ever desired. It was chaos on a scale unlike anything before, an endless clash of armies, heroes, and fate itself unfolding in real time. Ares did not hesitate to involve himself. He sided with the Trojans, not out of loyalty or strategy, but because the war itself called to him. He entered the battlefield not as a distant observer, but as a force within it. Wherever he moved, the fighting intensified. Soldiers felt a surge of aggression, their fear fading as rage took over. Under his influence, battles became more brutal, less controlled, and far more destructive. This was the kind of war Ares thrived in. Not organized, not noble, but wild and unstoppable. But this war was different. It was not ruled by chaos alone. Other gods were present, and among them was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Where Ares represented raw violence, Athena represented control, intelligence, and precision. She did not fight blindly. She calculated, observed, and struck only when necessary. This made her the perfect counter to everything Ares was. Their clash was inevitable. When Ares faced Athena on the battlefield, it was not just a fight between two gods. It was a conflict between two different understandings of war itself. Ares charged forward, driven by anger and instinct, confident in his strength. But Athena did not meet him with equal force. She waited, watched, and at the right moment, she acted. With precision and calm, she struck, and Ares fell. For a moment, the battlefield changed. The god of war, the embodiment of chaos, had been defeated, not by greater strength, but by greater control. This moment echoed far beyond the battlefield. It showed that war was not just about power or rage. It was about understanding. And in that understanding, Ares was flawed. He could dominate a battlefield, but he could not always win it. Because winning required something he often lacked: discipline. Wounded and humiliated, Ares was forced to retreat. His cries of pain were said to be as loud as thousands of men, echoing across the land. It was a rare moment where the god who thrived in suffering became the one who experienced it. And yet, even this did not break him. because Ares was not a god who learned easily. He did not return from defeat seeking change or growth. Instead, he returned to what he knew best: war, conflict, destruction. The lesson was there, clear and undeniable, but Ares chose not to follow it. His nature would not allow it. He was not meant to evolve into something else. He was meant to remain what he had always been. And yet, the world continued to change around him. Heroes rose and fell. Wars began and ended. Empires were built and destroyed. And through it all, Ares remained the same. A constant presence in every conflict, every moment where peace shattered and violence took its place. But even a god who refuses to change cannot escape what comes at the end of every war. Because no matter how many battles are fought, no matter how much chaos is unleashed, there is always something that follows: silence. And for Ares, silence was something far more terrifying than war itself. After countless battles, endless chaos, and the roar of war that followed him everywhere, there came moments that Ares could not understand. Moments when the fighting stopped, when the swords fell silent, and the battlefield no longer echoed with screams or the clash of steel. For others, this silence meant peace. For Ares, it meant emptiness. He would walk across abandoned battlefields long after the war had ended, surrounded by the remains of what once was chaos. Broken weapons, fallen warriors, in the stillness of a world that had nothing left to give. This was something Ares could not control. War, no matter how powerful it was, could not last forever. And when it ended, it left behind a void that even he could not fill. For the first time, Ares was forced to face something he had always ignored: the consequences of war. Not in the heat of battle, not in the moment of rage, but after everything was over. He saw not glory, not strength, but loss. Cities destroyed, lives erased, in silence where there was once noise. And in that silence, there was no place for him. This was the side of war that Ares never embraced. He loved the fight, the energy, the chaos, but not what came after. Because what came after did not belong to him. It belonged to grief, to memory, to those who survived. And Ares was not a god of healing. He was not a god of rebuilding. He had no role in what followed destruction, and so, he would leave. When the world grew quiet, Ares disappeared from it. Not defeated, not destroyed, but absent. Because without war, he had no purpose. And perhaps that was the greatest truth of all. Ares was powerful, feared, unstoppable in battle, but only in battle. Without war, even the god of war was nothing. Despite everything he had experienced, every defeat, every moment of silence, Ares never truly changed. He could not. His nature was not something that could evolve or be reshaped. He was not like mortals, who learned from pain or loss. He was a god, and more than that, he was a force. War itself. And war does not disappear. It waits. As time moved forward, new generations of mortals rose, and with them came new conflicts. Different lands, different kings, different reasons, but the same outcome. Tension would build, anger would grow, and eventually, it would break. And when it did, Ares returned, not called by name, not summoned with rituals, but drawn by something deeper: the inevitability of conflict. He was there in every war, even when unseen. In the moment a soldier chose to fight instead of run. In the instant anger overcame reason. In the first strike that turned words into violence. Ares did not need temples or prayers to exist. As long as war existed, so did he. But something had changed, even if only slightly. Not in his nature, but in how he was seen. The gods still did not respect him, and mortals did not worship him the same way they did other deities. They did not look to him for protection or wisdom. They feared him. And perhaps, in a way, that made him more real than any other god, because Ares was not an idea of what the world should be. He was a reflection of what it was: imperfect, violent, and unpredictable, and that truth ensured that he would never fade. Ares was never the hero of the story. He was never the wise ruler, the creator, or the savior. He did not build kingdoms or guide civilizations. He did not bring light, knowledge, or peace. Instead, he existed in the moments when all of those things fell apart, and yet, his role was just as important, because without war, there would be no understanding of peace. Without chaos, there would be no need for order. Ares was not the balance, but he was part of it, a necessary force that reminded both gods and mortals of what lay beneath the surface. That no matter how advanced, how controlled, or how peaceful the world became, conflict was always there, waiting. He was not loved, and he was not meant to be. But he was remembered. In every battle ever fought, in every moment where anger overcame reason, in every choice that led to destruction, Ares lived on. Not as a distant god on a throne, but as something closer, something within, and maybe that is what made him truly powerful, not the strength to destroy armies, but the ability to exist in every war, in every age, in every world. Ares was not just the god of war, he was war itself.